Centuries ago, the birth of a royal child wasn't just a family event, it was a matter of national destiny. From the moment they took their first breath, heirs were molded for power, trained to lead armies, negotiate with foreign powers, and carry the weight of a kingdom's future. But imagine if that child was born different, unable to walk without struggle, speak clearly, or learn at the pace expected of a prince or princess. In a royal court, that wasn't merely seen as a challenge, it was a scandal. For most of history, monarchies thrived on an image of perfection. A single flaw, especially in the bloodline, was considered a threat to the throne itself. That's why countless royal children born with disabilities were hidden away from the public eye, sometimes declared dead while still alive, and in the cruelest cases, quietly erased from history altogether. Among these hidden lives were children with Down syndrome, a genetic condition completely misunderstood for centuries. Today, we know Down syndrome is caused by an extra chromosome, giving individuals 47 instead of the usual 46. This small difference changes the way the body and brain develop, leading to certain physical features. Almond-shaped eyes, a flatter facial profile, smaller ears, a single crease across the palm, and sometimes health issues like heart defects or thyroid problems. More importantly, we now understand that people with Down syndrome can live long, fulfilling lives, full of love, work, and purpose. But centuries ago, before science had answers, these differences were feared. They were often seen as a curse from God, proof of weak blood, or even divine punishment. And in the gilded, image-obsessed world of royalty, a child with such a condition was treated as an unbearable disgrace. One of the most shocking modern examples comes from the British royal family. In 1919, Nerissa Bowes-lyon was born, followed in 1926 by her sister Catherine. They weren't distant relatives, they were first cousins to Queen Elizabeth II herself. Both girls had severe intellectual disabilities, and it's believed one or both may have had Down syndrome or a similar condition. Instead of growing up in royal surroundings, they were sent to the Royal Earlswood Hospital in Surrey, the long-term institution. Once they entered those walls, they were gone from public life forever. Official records even falsely listed them as dead. Though they lived for decades inside that hospital, Nerissa died in 1986. Catherine lived until 2014. Even more disturbing, the sisters were reportedly visited by relatives only a handful of times in their entire lives. For decades, no one outside the institution knew that these women, hidden away in quiet rooms, were members of Britain's most famous family. Their story only emerged in the 1980s, when investigative journalists uncovered the truth, sparking outrage and forcing uncomfortable conversations about the way families, even royal ones, treated relatives with disabilities. The message was clear. Even in the 20th century, fear of scandal outweighed compassion, but not every story ended in total seclusion. In 1915, Princess Alexandrine of Prussia was born, daughter of Crown Prince Wilhelm. She was diagnosed with what we now know as Down syndrome. Though the term was rarely used back then, her parents chose not to place her in an institution. She remained with her family, occasionally appearing in photographs and even on commemorative postcards. Still, her public presence was carefully controlled. Alexandrine never participated in royal duties. She attended a special school and lived quietly, away from court politics and the constant gaze of the public. She lived into adulthood, passing away in 1980, a far more comfortable life than Nerissa and Catherine endured, but one still shadowed by exclusion. Then there was Anne de Gaulle, born in 1928 to Charles de Gaulle, who would later lead France as president, and his wife, Yvonne. Though not of royal blood, she belonged to one of Europe's most prominent families, and had Down syndrome. Yet unlike most children with the condition at that time, she was raised at home. Her parents adored her, especially her father, who was said to share a deep and tender bond with her. Still, Anne's condition was never openly discussed, and her appearances at public events were rare. She died tragically at age 20 from pneumonia. In her memory, Yvonne founded a hospital dedicated to children with disabilities, a rare legacy of compassion in a time when most families still chose secrecy. These 20th century cases are some of the few we know about. In earlier centuries, the reality was likely far harsher. Historical whispers suggest that medieval and early modern royals often abandoned such children, sending them to distant estates, monasteries, or convents, where they would live and die in obscurity. In some of the darkest accounts, babies with visible disabilities may have been quietly killed at birth, their existence erased before it could even be recorded. Why? Because royal families didn't just rule with armies and treaties, they ruled with myth. The image of divine perfection was part of their power. A child who didn't fit that ideal was seen not just as different, but as dangerous to the throne's image. And so, history gained a hidden chapter, one written in secrecy, silence, and shadows. The hidden histories of Nourice and Catherine bowes-lyon, Princess Alexandrine of Prussia, and Anne de Gaulle are not just sad footnotes in royal archives. They are reminders of a time when compassion was often sacrificed on the altar of public image. For every documented case we know, there were likely dozens, perhaps hundreds, of royal children whose stories never reached the light. Their names were never written in history books. Their portraits were never painted. They were simply gone. And yet, these children lived. They laughed, they cried, they felt the warmth of the sun and the sting of loneliness. They were more than whispers in a family scandal, they were human beings. In the centuries before modern medicine, difference was often feared because it could not be explained. A child with Down syndrome in the Middle Ages might be called touched by God in one breath and cursed in the next. Depending on the family's beliefs, they might be sent to live with monks in a remote abbey or kept behind closed palace doors. In the royal mind, a visible disability was more than a personal sorrow, it was political danger. An imperfect heir could be used as a weapon by rivals. If word spread that the royal bloodline carried weakness, it could shake the faith of the people. In such a climate, hiding a child was considered protecting the crown. But the cost of that secrecy was profound. Imagine growing up without your family's love, without their visits or letters. Imagine knowing you were being kept hidden, your life edited out of existence so that others could maintain the illusion of perfection. This was the reality for countless royal children. Their worlds shrank to the walls of institutions, distant manors, or quiet religious houses. Today, that mindset feels cold and cruel. And it is. But it is also a reminder of how far we've come and how fragile progress can be. In the 21st century, people with Down syndrome attend schools, graduate from universities, work in meaningful jobs, and live independently. They perform on stage, compete in sports, run businesses, and change hearts with their achievements. They are openly loved, celebrated, and included in public life in ways that would have been unthinkable just a century ago. And yet, discrimination hasn't disappeared. Stigma still lingers. Some parents still face the crushing weight of judgment when their child is different. That is why remembering these hidden histories matters. When we speak the names of Nourice and Catherine, Alexandrine, and others like them, we push back against the erasure that once defined their lives. We tell the world, they were here. They mattered. Their stories challenge us to be better, to build a society where difference is not something to hide, but something to embrace. Where no child, royal or otherwise, is treated as a secret. The truth is, history often remembers the grand battles and glittering coronations, but the truest measure of a civilization is how it treats its most vulnerable. Royal palaces may shine with gold, but if the children inside are left in darkness, what does that say about the legacy of the crown? By telling these stories now, we offer something their own families could not give them: visibility, dignity, recognition. And maybe, in doing so, we ensure that no future child will ever have to live in the shadows simply because they are different. Because every child, and no matter their abilities, no matter their challenges, deserves to be seen, to be loved, and to have their story remembered.